Modern means right now, contemporary, our time, modern, 2011. So then, what is the art speak term postmodern, please? You've all heard that at some point in time. Post is beyond. So if modern is now, postmodern is yet to happen. However, postmodern has become a phrase in art speak. And it's frankly an unnecessary one, but it gives critics a way to have a little lingo to talk about. But don't pay too much attention to that. Pay attention to your gut response to the music itself or the art itself. Now, here's Beethoven standing at the beginning, or at the edge of this creative abyss I'm talking about. And rumor has it that Beethoven would walk around the studio and grunt and groan, make rude noises. He finally came up with this ba-ba-ba-bum, with which you are probably familiar. And I'm going to wager that he said, aha, ba-ba-ba-bum. Fantastic, I'm going to use that. It sounds, but that's true, that's what happened. I'm guessing, having had similar experiences myself, you may have had the same in the art studio. Ba-ba-ba-bum. But it's not just ba-ba-ba-bum. There are materials involved. There are pitches, there are rhythms, there are instrumentations that would be considered, dynamics, tempo, and all of that. And the answer to his first question, now what, is that very first statement of the ba-ba-ba-bum. See if we can get it to play. Let's start again. Here we go. Imagine you only heard it once. So he's, like I said, the AV will kill you every time. He does it once. And then he says, after lunch probably, because it's a lot of work just to do those first 2 minutes. He says, now what am I going to do? What's next? Now what? Well, what Beethoven does is takes that same ba-ba-ba-bum. He's standing at the edge. He's made the edge a little further out by going ba-ba-ba-bum. He says, oh, I'll just do it again. But he doesn't go ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-bum. No, others would have done that. He goes ba-ba-ba-bum. Step lower. Ba-ba-ba-bum. You're laughing now. But when you hear it, it knocks you out. Let's see if we can do this now properly. Okay. Here's the second one. I'd like to be able to get to the beginning again.
Press the escape key
Press
and
the
then the
escape
play
key.
key. Top,
Here we
and
go.
now press the play key.
Now press the play
Up
key.
there in the top left. And we'll just start over. Up the top left of the screen.
Top left of the screen.
No, not quite the top left. Sorry. It's my fault.
I knew this was going to happen. We were here an hour early to practice this.
Let me get you in there again. This is my fault, not his fault, by the way.
Okay, first time. Second time. Then he stops. Okay, you got the picture. Now we're swinging here.
There we go.
He's extended it a second time. Again, what do I do now? Now what? The question we all ask, whether we're painting, whether we're composing music, now what? Beethoven does it a third time. This time, though, he starts on the G and goes up instead of down 3 times, and it's soft. Here it goes. Okay, terrific. He's extending this precipice by repeating what he's done already and changing it a little bit. So it sounds brand new, and yet it sounds familiar at the same time. Well, it's just ba-ba-ba-ba. So, you can't go wrong. But he does it again, this time landing on the G instead of the E flat. Does it several times now. Okay, what he's done is asked that now what do I do question several times, and each time he's answered the question by taking something that he's used before in that piece, repeated it slightly and changing it slightly. Are you with me? So every time he asks the now what question, he repeats and changes slightly. Repeats and changes slightly. So it's a series of these questions. Now what's going to happen? And he responds by using what he's already done and changing it slightly. In fact, he plays that little motive some 37 or 38 times before he does anything different. Now we're at this particular point in the music where every composer in the early 1800s, a young music friend will attest to this, would play at this point a C minor chord, because he's now on the G chord, which is the dominant. But he doesn't do that. He plays the French horns fortissimo, playing A flat, which is a big shocking thing in those days. Only now does he do something different. So, he answers each now what question by taking from what he's already done and repeating it slightly. Now what happens is when you start a piece of art, a piece of music, when the canvas is empty, when this music hasn't been written yet, hasn't sounded yet, you can do whatever you like. But as soon as you begin, as soon as Beethoven begins with da-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba, at the right key, he can't start with, let's see, dee da dee 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 dee. You can't do that. First of all, it hasn't been written yet. But the point is, once you start writing, once you start and commit yourself to something, you eliminate a lot of other possibilities. And if you think of something, oh, that's great, maybe I'll use that. You are, I won't say required to, but it is up to you as an artist to exclude the things that don't fit at that particular time. Save it for later. So Beethoven may get lots of ideas while he's writing this piece. He saves them for later. In fact, he was composing the Symphony No. 6 at the same time as the Symphony No. 5. So he thought of these ideas, but he set them aside, focused on the ba-ba-ba-ba. Now, so every time we have the question, the empty canvas, the possibility of doing everything, and the question of now what. Now, if I can get this to work correctly, we'll go to the next slide. Aha, there we go. Now, this is a work of mine, a little fuzzy, but once again, I'm not a digital camera person. I think what you have in front of you might be a little clear. Now, for me, what I started with was this area here, which is a greenish. Do you all have those little cards that went up there? This is a greenish sort of a tinge there. It doesn't show up very well in the slide. But anyway, it was an old palette from a paint box that I had found. I've been working in assemblages for some time. And that thing knocked me out. I love the colors in there. Like I said, alas, you'll have to come to New York and see it because this does not do it justice. So I started with that, and then I had these two pieces of wood here, which happened to be the end pieces from either end of a piano. I had an old piano in my art studio, which I picked up in a dumpster. And having been involved in music, my wife said, would you like to take this and put it in your studio and work with it? I said, nah, I wouldn't. But about 5 minutes later, I said, yes, I would. And for about 1.5 years, I've been stripping this piano, this old piano, taking the parts off of it and making assemblages with them. This is the 6th or 5th of a series of 10 or so sonatas, I call them. And there are also about 20 smaller works that I call nocturnes. Not so much after Chopin, but after Whistler, who did several paintings called nocturnes and these sort of evening, evocative, softer colors from mainly England. So I started with this, and then I added these two little blocks. And again, now what? Aha, I love the way those two blocks fit together. Terrific, I love that. So there I am sitting in the studio with this and this. And again the question, now what? So it needed another rectangle. So here's this piece here, which is a piece of, actually it's a lawnmower blade. But don't tell anyone. But it works in terms of the overall form. These are not forms, by the way, these are shapes. The work as a whole has its own form, but the shapes make up the form. So this shape complemented this rectangle, and this rectangle. But I'm still not finished. wasn't enough. So then I found this piece of Bainbridge board here, light green, which then I put some drawing on, painted it a complementary green, and overlaid it. So it's underneath, on top, and beneath. So I have a series of rectangles, including now a piano key here. And I had this idea, remember I said you get ideas and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. If I had, in fact I have, an old New York State license plate, which is nice and rusty and green and yellow, I could have put it down in the corner there, but it wouldn't have fit somehow. So I still have the rusty blade. So as you're making choices in your work of art, it's important to realize what works and what does not work. And if it doesn't work, save it for later. This was my little conceit to my musical years. This is a tone cluster. The tone cluster can be, bang on the piano. There's a piano over there, but I won't shame myself with my terrible technique. These are piano keys that are tied together in a certain way, which, again, are sort of a rectangle that kind of complement these other rectangles. And then I have this other larger rectangle, which is, everything's just, that's skewed this way, this one's skewed that way. And I utilized this circle, which I've used in many of my works. And to me, it kind of unified the rectangles. This is outside, and this long string is not a piano string, which is what I wanted to use. I did not have a piano string. A friend of mine was a cellist, and she had an old C string on a cello, which is silver wound catgut, and I painted it a turquoise to complement that. So in every case with this piece, it's a series of now what do I do? What do I do now? Answered by utilizing the materials themselves in a way that created the next aha sort of a moment. Yeah, I like that. Now, I was not concerned with whether you liked it or not, frankly. I say that in all honesty. I don't mean that as a joke. Beethoven didn't care whether you liked ba 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 ba. He didn't care. He cared about what he liked. And it's important for you to do the same. And I found, oddly enough, the more that you like what you do, the more you'll find others will respond in the same way. Because there's something about that aha moment that gets conveyed to other people. I don't mean worrying about how to express yourself. Someone once said to me, don't worry about expressing yourself. You can't help it. You're an artist. You're going to whether you want to or not, so don't even worry about it. Worry about and think about getting those aha moments together. The ones that are aha for you. And you. Not for me. For you. Because otherwise, you won't be getting to the best of what is in you. So, this is an example in my work of several aha moments put together. And the question is, when do you know when the piece is over? Right? You're making a painting, a sculpture. When is it finished? How do you know it's finished? There's a simple but not simplistic answer to that. You know it's finished when, if you were to add one more thing, it would be superfluous and it wouldn't work. And if you took one thing away, it would fall apart because it wouldn't be done. Now, that's a glib answer. It's not an easy thing to distinguish, but it's necessary. When you add one more thing, if you were to add one more thing, the piece wouldn't work. Or take one thing away, it would fall apart. That's when it's done. That's when it's time to sit on your hands, go home, don't touch it. It's very tempting, to go in and do that on a painting, especially. Don't do that. When you see that it's finished, stop. Go have lunch. Let the paint dry. Show it to somebody you like. And move on. Then you're finished. So, I want to play you another piece of music that uses the same kind of technique, the same kind of way of answering that what now question. And it's by a man named Edgar Varese. Born in 1883, lived in Paris for a while, was friendly with all the great musicians of the time, with Debussy, the writers of Apollinaire, friendly with Rodin. He was a model for Rodin, in fact, when he was a younger guy. Came to America in the 20s, was one of the first people to be involved with electronic music in the 1930s. In 1928, he wrote a piece called Octandre, 8 players. flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horn, trumpet, trombone.